I slept with my former student thinking it was just a harmless one-night thing. Until my husband forwarded our explicit chats straight to his wife and my entire life imploded in 24 hours. I want to be precise about the word harmless. Because I used it. I used it in my own head every time I thought about what I was doing and every time I felt the thing that told me I should stop. Harmless? I told myself it was harmless. I believe that word so completely that I built an entire parallel reality around it. A reality where what I was doing had no weight. No consequence. No second address it would eventually be delivered to. I was wrong about the word. I was wrong about the reality. And I found out how wrong in 24 hours that I will spend the rest of my life accounting for. My name is Diana Calloway. I'm 41. I was an associate professor of communications at a mid-sized university for 9 years. I say was because I am currently on administrative leave pending a formal review that I do not expect to resolve in my favor. I have a PhD I earned at 28. I have a curriculum I built from scratch. I have a teaching award I received in my 4th year that sits in a box in my sister's garage now because I cannot look at it. I also have a husband named Warren who I was married to for 11 years and who I have not spoken to directly since he forwarded a series of messages from my phone to a woman named Kelsey and walked out of our house with a bag he had clearly packed before the day began. I have a former student named Joel Ashby who is 27 and married to the woman named Kelsey and who I thought understood the terms of what we were doing as clearly as I did. None of us understood anything as clearly as Warren. Let me tell you about Warren first. Because Warren is the part of this story that I keep returning to. Not the part where I made the choice. Not the part where the messages were forwarded. The part before all of it, when Warren was just my husband of 11 years and I had decided he was predictable. Warren Calloway is 44. He works in data architecture. He builds systems that manage and protect large volumes of sensitive information. He designs the infrastructure that keeps data secure. He understands, better than almost anyone, how information moves, where it goes when it's supposed to stay in one place, and exactly what it costs when it doesn't. I knew this about my husband. I knew it and I did not apply it to my own situation. He is quiet. He has always been quiet. He thinks before he speaks in a way that I used to call deliberate and later called slow and later still realized I had mistaken for something it wasn't. He was not slow. He was building. He has always been building. He built a career from careful patient work. He built our savings from consistent choices over 11 years. He built our house, not literally, but in every way that mattered, from the specific kind of love that shows up on time and pays attention to the small things and does not require an audience for its effort. I called that predictable. I called it boring in my own head the way people call things boring when what they mean is that the thing makes them feel safe and safety has started to feel like a ceiling instead of a foundation. I was wrong about that too. Joel Ashby was in my advanced communications seminar 3 years ago. He was 24 then. Exceptional student. The kind who asks questions that redirect the entire conversation, who writes papers that make you read them twice, who stays after class not to impress but because he genuinely wants to continue the discussion. I noticed him the way professors notice the exceptional ones. I noticed him and kept it at that for the full semester and the year after when he graduated and left the university. He came back into my orbit 18 months ago. Alumni networking event. He was there representing the communications firm he had joined. I was there representing the department. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing important and then about several things that were. He had a confidence at 26 that he hadn't had at 24. He was married. He had shown me a photo of Kelsey on his phone the way people show photos of things they are proud of. She was beautiful and warm-looking and I had said, "She's lovely." He had said, "She really is." We exchanged professional contact information. I told myself that was what it was. Professional. The messages started 6 weeks after the networking event. Professional first. Then personal. Then the thing that messages become when two people are not being honest about what they are doing. I want to be precise, I initiated the direction change. Not Joel. Me. I am the one who wrote the first message that was not professional. I am the one who introduced the language that shifted everything. He followed. But I led. I told myself it was harmless because it was text. Because nothing physical had happened. Because words on a screen between adults are not the same as something real. 3 months after the networking event we met for coffee. Neutral location. Public. I told myself this too was harmless. Professional. Two people who had once had an academic relationship maintaining a collegial connection. We met 3 more times after that. Each time I told myself the same thing. Harmless. Collegial. Nothing that mattered. The one night happened 4 months ago. I had attended a conference in a city 2 hours from home. Joel had a work trip to the same city. I want to be specific, this was not a coincidence. We had discussed it in the messages. We had arranged it. I told Warren I was attending a 2-day conference. I was? I just did not tell him that the second evening of the conference involved Joel. I told myself it was one time. I told myself it would not happen again. I told myself that one time was different from an affair. That a line existed and I had crossed it, but the crossing was finite. A single event with an edge. Not a pattern. I wrote this to Joel in the messages after. I wrote things that I believed I was sending to a private conversation between two adults. I wrote things that described what had happened. I wrote things that expressed what I had felt. I wrote things that I would not have written in any medium that had a wider audience. Warren had access to my messages. Not through hacking. Not through anything illegal. Through the family plan we shared on our phones that I had forgotten or chosen not to think about, included a linked backup feature I had set up 3 years ago when I lost a phone and spent a week trying to recover data. I had enabled backup sharing on the family plan. Warren had never mentioned it. I had forgotten it existed. He had not forgotten. I found out he knew on a Thursday morning. Not because he told me. Because he was already gone when I woke up. He had left at some point during the night. The bed was made on his side. Not hastily. Properly. With the specific neatness of someone who has made a decision and is not leaving anything undone. His coffee mug was in the drying rack. Washed. He had made coffee and washed his mug before he left. My phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up. There was a message from an unknown number. It said, "This is Kelsey Ashby. I think you know why I'm contacting you." I sat up. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I opened my messages to Joel. The entire thread. Every message from the beginning. I scrolled to the bottom. The last message in the thread was not from me or Joel. It was from Warren. Sent at 2:47 a.m. It said, "This is Warren Calloway, Diana's husband. I am forwarding this conversation to you in its entirety. I believe you have a right to know what your husband has been doing. I am sorry for the pain this causes. It is not your fault and it is not my intention to harm you. Warren." He had written, "I am sorry for the pain this causes." He had written, "It is not your fault." To Kelsey. At 2:47 in the morning while I was sleeping. While he was sitting somewhere in our house with my messages open and a decision fully made. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same. I texted, "Warren, please call me. I need to talk to you. I need to explain." He replied once. A single message. It said, "There's nothing to explain, Diana." I read the conversation. I understand what happened. I'm not interested in an explanation. I've asked Vivian to handle the process from here. Please direct any communication to her. Vivian was a name I didn't recognize. I found out within the hour that Vivian Marsh was a family law attorney with 17 years of experience whose office Warren had apparently contacted 3 weeks prior to this morning. 3 weeks. He had contacted an attorney 3 weeks ago. While I was still in the house. While we were still having dinner and watching television and going through the routines of a life I had not yet realized was already being carefully concluded. My phone rang at 8:43 a.m. The number was from the university. The call was from the dean's office assistant. She said, "Dr. Calloway, Dean Harrington would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience today." I said, "Can I ask what this is regarding?" She said, "I believe Dean Harrington would prefer to discuss that in person." I called my department chair before I called back the dean's office. "Dr. Reyes." She answered immediately and the quality of her answer told me she already knew something. She said, "Diana? I was going to call you." She said, "There's been a complaint filed with the Title IX office this morning." She stopped. "Diana. Were you in a relationship with a former student?" I said, "He graduated 3 years ago." She said, "He was your student?" I said, "Former. He was no longer enrolled when." She said, "Diana? The Title IX office is going to want to speak with you. The dean is going to want to speak with you. I need you to get an attorney before either of those conversations happen. Today. This morning." I said, "It was after he graduated. He was 27. He's a professional. He's not." She said, "Diana? Get an attorney. I'm telling you this as someone who has worked with you for 9 years. Get an attorney before you speak to anyone at this institution." She hung up. I sat in my car in the driveway of the house Warren had left sometime in the night and I tried to understand the shape of what was happening. Joel was a former student. 3 years removed. 27 years old. A professional. Nothing that had happened between us had occurred during his enrollment. Nothing had occurred during any advising relationship. Nothing had occurred during any period when I held any formal authority over him. I believe these facts were significant. I still believe they are legally significant. What I understand now that I did not fully understand then is that legally significant and institutionally significant are not the same category. Universities exist in a space where perception and policy and power dynamics are evaluated by people whose job is to evaluate them conservatively. A professor and a former student. Even years after graduation. Even with no active institutional relationship. That evaluation was not going to resolve quickly or cleanly. I called an attorney. A woman named Sable whom my sister had used for a contract dispute and described as formidably precise. Sable answered, heard 30 seconds of the situation, and said, "Stop talking. Come to my office. Do not speak to the dean. Do not speak to the Title IX office. Do not speak to your department chair. Do not speak to Joel. Do not speak to anyone at that institution until you have sat across from me and I have told you what to say." I went to Sable's office. She listened for 40 minutes without interrupting. Then she asked questions for 20 minutes. Then she said, "You have a complicated situation. Not an impossible one. But complicated." She said, "The former student aspect is your primary exposure. The institution will argue a power dynamic regardless of the timeline because he was in your seminar and you were evaluating his work." She said, "The explicit nature of the messages creates a secondary exposure because they have been submitted as part of a formal complaint by the student's wife." I said, "Kelsey filed a complaint." Sable said, "Someone filed a complaint with the Title IX office this morning. The complaint contains copies of the message thread. The message thread appears to have been forwarded from your husband to the student's wife and from the student's wife to the Title IX office." She paused. "Your husband acted with considerable precision here." I said, "He contacted an attorney 3 weeks ago." Sable said, "Then he was building this for at least 3 weeks. Possibly longer if he had access to the messages over a longer period." I said, "He had access for as long as the backup was enabled." Sable said, "When did you enable the backup?" I said, 3 years ago." She wrote something. Then she said, "So he potentially had access to the messages from the beginning. Every message? The entire thread as it developed?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Diana? Your husband watched this happen in real time. For months. And he chose his moment with the specificity of someone who had thought very carefully about the outcome he wanted." I sat with that. I had thought Warren was predictable. I had thought that quiet and steady and deliberate meant I understood what he would do. I had not understood that quiet people are sometimes quiet because they are building something. I had not understood that steady people are sometimes steady because they have decided on their direction and do not need to announce it until they are ready to move. He was ready at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday. By 9 a.m. my department chair had called. By 9:30 the dean's office had called again. By 10:15 a colleague named Marcus who sat 2 offices down from mine had texted, "Diana, I don't know what's happening but people are talking. Are you okay?" By 11 the graduate student who assisted me with my research seminar had emailed to ask whether office hours were still happening. They were not still happening. I was in Sable's office while my professional life was reorganizing itself around a center that was no longer me. Kelsey. I need to tell you about Kelsey because she is the person in this story who did nothing and lost the most. She woke up Thursday morning to a forwarded message thread from a woman she had never met. She read her husband's messages. She read my messages. She read the things I had written about one night in a hotel room 2 hours from home while she was wherever she was, doing whatever she was doing, being a woman who believed her marriage was intact. She is 28. They had been married for 2 years. She works in healthcare administration. She had done nothing except marry a man who had made choices that reached forward into her morning and changed the shape of everything in it. I think about Kelsey more than I think about any other element of this. Not because of the Title IX complaint, I understand why she filed it, she was in pain and needed somewhere to direct it and the institution was available. But because she was collateral? She was standing in a field where 2 other people had built something explosive and she woke up Thursday morning inside the radius. I have not reached out to Kelsey. Sable has told me not to. Anything I say can be used in the institutional process. Anything I say can be characterized as an attempt to influence a witness. I understand this. I follow the instruction. But I think about it. The call she received at 2:47 in the morning. The word forwarding. The reading. Joel. I haven't spoken to Joel since before Thursday. His attorney contacted Sable within 48 hours of the complaint. They are managing their own situation. Joel and Kelsey are navigating their marriage through whatever process people navigate it through when the thing that happened happens. I have no information about where they are. I don't seek it. It is not mine to seek. Warren. Everything has gone through Vivian. Sable has communicated with Vivian. The divorce petition was filed Thursday afternoon. The same day. He had the paperwork ready. He had the petition drafted. He had Vivian prepared. The filing happened while I was sitting in Sable's office understanding the shape of what was happening to my career. He filed the petition at 3:14 p.m. on the same day he left at some point before dawn. He had been carrying this for weeks. He had organized every element. The attorney. The petition. The backup access. The 2:47 a.m. forward. He executed everything in sequence with the precision of a man who builds systems for a living and understands that a system only works if every component is in the right place at the right time. I did not understand I was living inside a system he had designed until the system activated. The house is mine to stay in during proceedings. Sable has ensured that. It is a 3-bedroom house that Warren and I bought 6 years ago. His office is still his office. His books are still on the shelves. His coffee mug is still in the drying rack. I have not moved anything. I don't know if this is grief or something else. I don't know the name for the specific way you stand in a room that used to contain a life and look at the objects that remain when the life has been forwarded somewhere else. The institutional process. I met with the Title IX coordinator 8 days after Thursday. Sable was present. The conversation was careful and documented and lasted 3 hours. The coordinator asked precise questions. I gave precise answers. Sable interjected when necessary. The formal finding has not been issued yet. The review is ongoing. Sable's assessment, delivered to me in the specific direct way that makes her worth what she charges, is this: the institution will find a policy violation. The question is the severity of the consequence. She believes the fact that Joel had graduated 3 years prior and was in no active institutional relationship with me will mitigate the finding. She believes the explicit content of the messages will not help. She believes that I should not plan my future around the assumption of returning to my current position. 9 years. A curriculum I built from scratch. A teaching award. Office hours I kept faithfully for 9 years. Students who found their way to their own work through the conversations we had in the seminar room twice a week. I am not asking for sympathy about this. I made choices that put me here. I am recording it because it is true and because I believe in precision about what things cost. What this cost? An 11-year marriage to a man who showed up every day for 11 years and loved me in the ways that quiet, steady people love, without announcement, without requirement, without the kind of heat that I had mistaken for the only valid form of love. A career I spent 13 years building from undergraduate to doctorate to tenure track to associate professor. A professional reputation in a field where reputation is the primary currency. A colleague network that has mostly gone quiet. Not all of them. A few have reached out. Dr. Rhea sent a personal message, separate from her institutional role, that said, "I hope you are okay. The professional situation is what it is. As a person, I am sorry for what you're going through." That message sits in my phone. I have read it many times. My sister. She has not gone quiet. She is the person who comes with wine and does not say "I told you so" and does not require me to present a version of this that is more manageable than it actually is. She sat with me Thursday evening when the day was over and I had finally come home to the house with a coffee mug in the drying rack. She sat with me and she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "What do you need?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Okay. We'll figure it out." We are figuring it out. I think about Warren at 2:47 a.m. I think about him sitting somewhere in the house, his office, maybe, at his desk surrounded by the systems he builds for other people, with my messages open and a decision made. I think about what it costs to know something for weeks or months and say nothing. To continue going through the routines of a shared life while you are building an exit that is precise enough to activate in 24 hours and comprehensive enough to reach a university's Title IX office by 9 a.m. I think he loved me for 11 years in a way I did not fully see. I think that love included trusting me in a way that I failed. I think when that trust failed, he did not fall apart. He designed the system that would activate when he was ready. He was ready at 2:47 a.m. I was not ready at all. That is the difference between us. That has always been the difference between us. He builds things. He plans. He reads the document before he signs it. I called it predictable. I understand now that I was the unpredictable variable in a life he had built carefully. And when the variable performed outside acceptable parameters, the system responded. I handed him the data. I wrote the messages. I forgot about the backup. I called him boring while he was paying attention. I cannot undo the messages. I cannot undo Thursday. I cannot undo the 11 years I did not see clearly enough. What I can do is be precise about what happened. Record it accurately. Account for it honestly. I called it harmless. There is no version of this story where that word was ever true. I know that now. In a house with a coffee mug in the drying rack and a career under review and an attorney who charges $340 an hour and a marriage that was forwarded away at 2:47 in the morning by a man I should have seen more clearly. I know it now. It is too late for knowing to fix anything. But it is not too late for honesty. That is all I have left that is worth anything. So that is what I am giving.